Hello everyone, welcome to Bruno's Geek Reviews RPG Talk. So first of all, I've decided not to continue the How to Not Be a Bad Role Player series. Instead of, like, if I have things to say about that aspect of role playing, I'll just say it in this series. It seemed like there was no reason at all to split it into, like, how can I put this, two series of videos that people would have to follow for that theme. I mean, you're already, if you already follow my videos, then you'll be able to find them easier. Like my videos about role playing games, because our RPG talk includes sometimes what not to do in a game and all that. So yeah, just a quick mention. Now, the previous video I did about how, like, if magic users are balanced in D&D and all the variants and all that, had a lot of fun, like, seeing the comments and replying to them, because people were like, well, I think that so anyway, I think it's like if you liked that video, I recommend you also read the comments, and I replied to many of them, because if you found the subject matter interesting, then I think the comments will be interesting too. Now there's a fellow blogger of mine who saw the video, and she sent me a message on, but it was on Tumblr, so you won't see it on the YouTube page. I mean, so here I'm actually gonna read it because I find it interesting. So she says, one of the things that you said is that in the D&D universe, if a party is fighting a group of evil creatures, those creatures will automatically attack the wizard first in order to get rid of it. Although this may be true sometimes, it is often not possible in a lot of situations. For example, my character always has protection spells such as Mirror Image, Invisibility, and Protection from Evil, which makes her very difficult to hit. Also, because I am always in the back, the enemy must fight through the warriors in order to get to me. If an enemy is in combat with another player and they try to break away from that fight in order to go into combat with me, that warrior gets free attacks on the enemy because he is turning his back to run. In brackets, I don't know if this is a rule in the edition you play or not, but it is in 2nd edition. Yeah, it is pretty much a rule, at least in Pathfinder, which is my favorite one. I also play old school ones like Lamentations of the Flame Princess. It isn't a rule there, but like, logic applies, of course. And even if you don't get free attacks, you're still, like, closer to the warrior first before you get to the spellcaster. The warrior still has time to attack. Anyway, it makes sense either way. What I am saying is that if a magic user is in a well-organized party, he or she is usually protected from direct attacks because the fighters surround him. I've always dealt with my lack of hit points by making myself impossible to hit. If I was ever in combat with a fighter, he would never be able to win because he wouldn't be able to hit me. Yeah, so then she adds, a good DM makes scenarios challenging for players, but not impossible. A DM could always go as harsh as possible, but that usually leads to a lot of player deaths in focusing on technicalities. DM's job is to make the game enjoyable and difficult to get through. I'm not saying that DMs should take it easy on a specific class, but they need to balance out how harsh they are in general. It should never be a DM's goal to destroy the party. Just my opinion. So yeah, no, actually these are very good arguments, and I'm going to get into them. First of all, let me tell you, the name of her blog is, wait a moment, just want to make sure here. Yeah, it's Write in White, so write as in writing, in white.tumblr.com. But I'm going to write it down in the description of the video, just look in the, I'll include it. So, yeah, actually, I think this, like, that's a very good, these are very good arguments, and what I want to say is, actually, I think a fair DM is able to be really harsh when it's called for. Like, if, for example, in my previous videos, I was explaining, like veteran soldiers who capture a spellcaster would deal with the spellcaster in a way that, like, it wouldn't be like a piece of cake for a spellcaster to be able to spellcast while captured, or they might break his finger, stuff like that. So that's really harsh, but at the same time, being fair isn't just doing terrible things to your players constantly. Being fair just means, like, what should happen is going to happen. So by the same token, if a party of adventurers prepares really well, in my case, I just let them have that victory, and if they prepared well, that's good for them. I don't change the challenges suddenly just because I think they didn't struggle enough. No, if they had it easy because they prepared well, that's perfect. And a balancing factor is also that it doesn't remove the balancing factor of the mage, because the mage can't be as reckless as the fighter, so it still applies. And like the example she gives, I even mentioned in my video, like the fighter should be in front of the mage, and during combat. So I actually agree with everything she said. The thing is, very often I get misinterpreted, which is understandable, because I mentioned very horrible things that you can do to the characters sometimes, but they're all based on being fair, for better or worse. And sometimes it is being fair for better for the players, like I've often seen like DMs tell stories, or they suddenly drop a challenge they were going to put there just because the players prepare for it. So it's no longer fun if they're ready for it. I'm like, what? Like, it would suck to be, I don't know, it would suck to be Batman in that universe, where Batman prepares and then suddenly like, yeah, doesn't matter, it's not going to happen since you prepared for it. I don't know if you get what I mean, but anyway, no, I think being fair goes both ways. If the party has prepared well, and according to their strengths and weaknesses, then that's what they should do. That's really what a party, a D&D party should do, yeah. So I completely agree with what she's saying, like, yeah, and we had an exchange about it. I'm not going to start reading the whole exchange, but it was interesting. So anyway, yeah, I'll link it, writeandwhite.tumblr.com. Now I want to mention some books that I think are interesting, like for D&D players. Just like that, for fun. This book is the Dublin Core. Now I haven't finished it yet, and I warn you right away, I'm actually reading a few books at the same time. It's a thing I do. The Dublin Core is really cool. It's basically like a group of bad guys in a fantasy world, and it feels very D&D. And you have no orc control. It's basically the kind of like just your typical like adventuring group, but on the bad guy side. And there's a lot of humor in this book. It's really good. Like it's dark humor sometimes, but like you're not reading like. Well, I don't have an example off the top of my head. At least not one that wouldn't be obscure, I guess. But it has a dose of humor. Like it's kind of like dark but light at the same time. It's you don't feel. At least I haven't finished it yet, but even though the characters are evil, I never felt depressed while I was reading it. If anything, you feel amused. And a little extra something that's fun is that the kobold in the story they describe it as having features like both canine and reptilian. So for the whole debate, old school versus new school, like should kobolds look like dogs or like lizards or small dragons, small humanoid dragons, like so you get a little bit of both worlds there for the kobold. It's fun. I thought it was a nice touch. I'm also reading The Still Remains from Richard Morgan. This is actually making me think a lot of Lamentations of a Flame Princess, like this kind of like crap sack world. It's really depressing so far. I like it. I've just started. It's really depressing, but it's really good. Like the characters are really interesting right away. Like I haven't finished it yet. Like I reserve judgment for later. Just as a small warning though, like the main character of this book is gay. So and Richard Morgan actually goes into some detail about his sex life. So if you have trouble with that kind of like, oh, icky, gay sex, like, well, don't buy it then. But it's a really good read, and I don't have a problem with it. Like, I don't care. If the story's good, the characters are interesting, that's not a problem for me. I don't even know why I mentioned this, like, shouldn't be a deal. But it is for many people, so I guess that's why I mentioned it. Anyway. Now, another thing is, I'm sure a lot of people already know this, the Dresden Files books. I know I'm late to the party. I started it not long ago. So anyway, the Stormfront is the first book. It's actually a wizard in modern times. It's fantasy, modern fantasy, and this book, I'm usually how can I put this? Like I usually play more fighter types, the ranger or stuff like that, and in D&D. And this guy made me wanna play a wizard. It's really fun because they kind of describe how he operates in the lab, the laboratory, and everything, like for his spells and his potions, and he made it sound fun instead of boring. So Jim Butcher is the writer. He made it sound fun, and there's touches that make it really cool. Like this is fun. Like he can't like Harry Dresden, the main character, as a wizard because like in this universe, like he can't go near a computer without having it malfunction. So a lot of stereotypes of wizards are kind of explained. They give you a reason why. Like, why would wizards always have these old-looking places? Well, because technology fails around them. The more technologically advanced something is, like the more it fails. So this is another recommended read if you like D&D. Now, fans of Warhammer already know these guys. It's Gotrek and Felix, and I'm reading the Fork Omnibus. This is a really cool action, like fantasy duo. Gotrek and Felix. Basically, Gotrek is a dwarf, a slayer, and he did something in the past where he something that was not honorable, and in the Warhammer universe, when dwarves can make amends for whatever they did by becoming a slayer, so they just shave their heads and they'll just leave this mohawk cut, and tattoo themselves and dye their head red, and they seek death in battle to make up for whatever they did. And Felix is a human poet who, while drunk one night, promises to write a poem about Gotrek's death. He swears an oath, but then like Gotrek keeps surviving, so now like Felix is stuck following this crazy dwarf who's looking for the biggest monsters and the biggest dangers. And Felix, everything's like, oh no, like, but he promised to follow him and write about his death and make an epic poem. So he's stuck following Gotrek, and that's really funny. So the dynamic is, you have very often like Felix kind of like torn between wanting to have a normal life again. So in a way, he wishes Gotrek would die already on one side because he wants to have a normal life. But then again, he feels guilty about wanting Gotrek to die because Gotrek is his friend. So it's a really interesting dynamic. Then there's dhampir. And while I was reading this, what pissed me off is that it's medieval fantasy and it's vampires. So the main character is kind of like a Blade, is a half. She's a half vampire, and her colleague happens to be a half elf rogue or assassin or whatever. Anyway, and this felt very D&D like because not necessarily in the setting itself, but the fact that her companion, who's a rogue, like does things like disarm traps, and in the second book of this series, he mentions that he knows how to use certain weapons better than others. So it makes me think of D&D, how rogues are allowed certain types of weapons, but like they're not so good with other ones. The only thing that pissed me off, as I was starting to say, is that a lot of people would see this. I don't know what it is with people, and like, when fans of horror make jokes and fantasy make jokes about like how Twilight ruined everything, and then a lot of people have the normal actually reaction saying like, don't exaggerate, it's just one story, it doesn't ruin everything. I think what they mean is just it ruins their perception of vampires, because when I was reading that, like some people would go like, is that like Twilight or something? And like, no, it isn't. Even even a fan of a fantasy would ask something like that, and looked at the cover, and because it's a woman, I guess, you can have maybe a sexist reaction. And actually, an interesting thing about this series is that you get the perspectives of the good guys and the bad guys, and the bad guys are just as interesting. So that's really cool. But in the cover it says like, a mix of The Lord of the Rings and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, an engaging adventure. And Kevin J. Anderson wrote that. And I don't agree at all with him. It doesn't feel like Lord of the Rings, and it doesn't feel like Buffy at all. Like I don't know, like, is it medieval fantasy like Lord of the Rings? Yeah, it's medieval fantasy, that's all. Like, the world doesn't feel at all similar to Tolkien's Middle-earth. And then, is it like Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Well, I guess it's a woman who kills vampires, but that's where the similarities end. Like, this girl, if anything, would be more like Faith than Buffy. Like, she's not like Buffy at all. She doesn't have a sense of humor. I don't know, like, yeah, she's a woman, she kills vampires, but it's kind of like if you looked at Blade and you went, oh, it's a mix of martial arts and Abraham Van Helsing from the Dracula novel, and you go like, huh? You know, yeah, he kills vampires, but I don't see the similarity. Anyway, no disrespect to Kevin J. Anderson, but I really don't agree with your two comparisons. But the book is good. And yeah, okay. Finally, on the recommended reading list. Actually, I don't. Well, in my previous videos, I did a review of Crypts and Things, which is a retro clone of D&D, and it's for like Robert E. Howard, you know, type of stories like Conan, the Grey Mouser, all those guys. Although I haven't read the stories of the Grey Mouser and Fart and the Grey Mouser, I think. I'm sorry, I wanted to read them, but they at the bookstore they actually don't have the first book, and when I wanted to order it, and they didn't have it in the list for some reason, like because Dark Horse Comics is actually publishing them, but the first book is not available. They collected the stories, so I'm gonna try to look for it online. Anyway, and actually, rewatching my review, I have to admit the review wasn't very good. I didn't have much to say about it. But I had done like a few other reviews of D&D variants already, so by that time maybe I had said everything I needed to say about variants. It's very simple. Like this one, as a quick reminder, it feels very much like those stories because characters can do pretty much anything. Like even the fighter type can do like thief-like stuff. It's just the thief will be better at it, obviously, but and everything is results, kills, saving throws, whatever. It's a single statistic, a single roll. I mean, not attacks, and like there's stuff that is still based on abilities, but you know. So it feels very much like the Conan stories and everything. And I was actually reading the Dark Horse Comics again has collected the Savage Sword of Conan, and that Marvel Comics used to publish back in the days in the 70s, back in the day, and they have like collected them, and I'm reading the first volume right now, and I'm amazed at how cool it is, and you know there's a lot of like Tool-like horror in there. The art is amazing. The stories are often very good. Yeah, I'm enjoying them a lot more than I thought I would. And you know they hold up really well. Because of course, like Conan, there's an aspect of it which is it's kind of like this stereotypical muscle guy, and he's the alpha male, and all the women are like in bikinis, and they can't wait to jump at him, you know, like. But at the same time, the stories are also really good, and you know, it's less cheesy than I thought it would be, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And yeah, Conan is a flawed character in certain ways. Like when I'm reading these stories, like I'm not seeing him as the perfect kind of guy, you know. So if he's sexist or whatever, it fits with the story, you know. Yeah, actually another fun thing is in this, Conan isn't perfect. Like, you know when players are often complaining about like, oh, my character is failing, like they don't manage to, like they lose a fight, or they don't succeed in like sneaking silently somewhere, stuff like that. In these comics, like actually Conan gets knocked down pretty often. Like enemies can knock him down and he gets back up later, and like, oh, what happened, like, or he gets captured. So even the alpha male like Conan can, like, you know, for all the D&D players who feel like, oh, my character is not as cool as Aragorn or Conan or Robin Hood because, you know, he doesn't always win right away. Well, neither did Conan, and he's one of the biggest badasses in fantasy. So there you go, don't feel so bad. But yeah, recommended reading for anyone who plays D&D. I'm especially thinking about Crypts and Things or Lamentations of a Flame Princess is really good for this. There's a lot of weird stuff in there. That would be perfect for weird fantasy role-playing. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much it for my list of recommended reading for D&D games. And like non-game books. And finally, I'm just going to mention really quick, Low Life, the role-playing game by Andy Hupp that I really like. It's really cool. It uses the Savage Worlds system, if you're familiar with it, so it's an easy system to get into. You don't need to learn a lot of rules, and Low Life is a really cool setting. Very funny, like, when I had a game with my friends, I'll tell the story at some point of the game, but we were laughing and our faces hurt from all the smiling, so it's really cool to play. And the creator, Andy Hupp, actually has a Kickstarter. He's gonna like he's doing the core book, like he's doing a new version, and if you saw my review of the Low Life books, the current ones, like the new art of the first source book is in color. It's really cool. Let me find a full page. Oh, I guess there you go. So I'm pretty sure the new book will look amazing. So just look in the again in the description of the video. I'm going to include a link to the Kickstarter for the new core book for Low Life. And if you heard about it before and weren't sure, like, now's the time. There's a Kickstarter. Now's the time to try it out. It'll be like a new version. There's going to be new stuff, and you know, this is a role playing game that I feel is really original. It's not like regurgitation of what you've seen 100 times. And it's like just right in between like something new and original, but it also has like very classic aspects of role playing games. It feels a lot like D&D. When you take away a lot of like its core has a lot to do with like the kind of like primal concepts of what we like in role playing games. Most of us, you know. So yeah, it's like you. A lot of okay. Here's how I'm gonna say it. A lot of comical RPGs are so out there, and this is really out there. But I mean, the core of it is a little bit like, okay, this looks really funny, but what do I do with it now? Whereas in Low Life, like you know what to do with it. It's an adventure game, like you're adventurers. It's just that the world around you is crazy. But it's nothing where you're trying to play Looney Tunes characters. You know, it's not like that. The core is very familiar to most role players. Anyway, so yeah. So as I said in the descriptions, you'll find the link for the blog of the girl who wrote to me about spellcasters. I thought they were really interesting thoughts on the matter. So were many of my comments, but like you can already read them there. That's why I didn't like read them aloud in this video. It would take a lot of time. Yeah, some recommendation for reading, and I'll add the link for the Kickstarter for Low Life. And now, at the moment when you'll be watching this video, there is less than a month remaining. I don't remember exactly how many days, but it's less than a month. So I suggest you at least take a look at the Kickstarter. Sorry, take a look at it and see. Maybe I'm pretty sure a lot of you will like what you see. Well, thanks for watching.